Hello my friends and welcome to the Breathcast. My name is Maher. I'm a breathwork coach and the host of this wonderful podcast, the Breathcast, where I get to pick the brains of top people in the world of breathing and breathwork, get to speak to authors and scientists and yogis and people that just are also a bit like me and probably like you, obsessed with breathing. And today I have got a real joy to share this person with you. His name is Jim Morningstar, and I want to get this bit correct. So Jim Morningstar, PhD, is the originator of Therapeutic Breathwork, director of one of the longest standing breathwork training centers in the world, and co-director and the founder of the Global Professional Breathwork Alliance, setting ethical and training standards for the field of breathwork. Now, Jim gave me an hour and a half of his time with the sole purpose of being able to explain to us the history of recent modern breathwork. And for those of you that might have heard of things like holotropic breathwork or rebirthing or conscious connected breathing, this is the podcast, this is the story, this is the scoop, as they would say in the media. Jim's going to share with us his very unique perspective and story on the recent history. And when I say recent history, I'm talking sort of the 60s, the 70s and the 80s of breathwork, and this thing that happened, this eruption of conscious connected breathing. Now, this is very well timed because I've just been on my own rebirthing journey. I've just been on a hot water rebirth and a cold water rebirth experience, both of which have just taken me to whole new levels in terms of what the breath can do. And I will talk about these in separate videos on probably the main channel, and there'll probably be a podcast about it. But Jim's got a really unique perspective. He's going to share with you how, in a very weird way, how he got into breathwork, not the way you'd expect, and the proximity he had to some of these big names that in breathwork you might have heard of before. A chap called Leonard Orr, who's considered kind of the modern father of breathwork, of conscious connected breathing. And then you've got things like holotropic breathing and all that element of it. So this is a big one. This is a really big one. And it's less of a conversation and more Jim telling his life story. So it's a real privilege. So there's not really much yabbering from me, so I'll get it in now over the next sort of 90 seconds. But then as we go into it, I just leave Jim alone. I just want him to tell his story without me asking him loads of questions, and for you to listen to how breathwork got to where it is today. So this is way before Wim Hof, way before all the stuff that's going on right now with all these kind of new schools of breathwork. And this is going back sort of 30, 40, 50 years to tell the story about how these ancient techniques that have been around for thousands of years started to resurface, and this movement happened in sort of the 60s and 70s. So I can't wait to share it with you. Just before we get stuck into this podcast, I just want to share some important up-to-date information with you. It is the 26th of October right now, so in less than 4 weeks, on the 19th of November, me and Tom Granger will be hosting an Airheads Day online. It's going to be a day packed full of breathwork goodness. Please consider coming to join us. It's only 47 quid. It's going to be all on Zoom. You can do it from the comfort of your own home. We're going to take you through the Airheads process, which basically is helping people understand all the different elements of breathwork. So this podcast you're about to listen to talks about some of the heavy, conscious, connected stuff. I'm a big proponent of functional breathing, which tends to be this scale. So in this Airheads Day, we're going to have some real fun sharing with you all the different breathing techniques and the variables and what they do. Different variables in breathwork do different things. Mouth, nose, light, slow, fast, quiet, all these different things, and there's a whole host more. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Please consider joining us. Thank you to all those people that have already bought the tickets so far. It's going to be a Zoom spectacular, breathtacular event. You get to keep a copy of the recordings as well. How cool is that? So we're going to take you through everything, and for 47 quid, I don't know what that is in dollars, $50, something like that, $55, you're going to have a full day with me and Tom. You're going to get to ask us questions, we're going to get to play with breathing together, and then you get to keep those recordings so you can practice and keep going on your own. So, Airheads event, 19th of November. Come and join us. The link is down below. I cannot wait now to share with you Jim Morningstar. So take it away. Thanks for watching the Breathcast. I'll take a deep breath. Cheers. Jim Morningstar, thank you so much. It is an absolute pleasure. I'm so excited to be sitting down with you now, and we're going to be talking about some very special breath stuff today. We're going to be talking about, or I'll let you introduce in a second, but we're going to be going deep, I think, today. So I'm going to shut up and let you talk. But I wonder if you could kick us off with a little bit of an introduction about who you are.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mike. First of all, it's such a pleasure to have this space to share something that's so dear to my heart. I was trained as a clinical psychologist, and I'll get into that a little bit later, but I didn't really find my vocation until breathwork came along, and it took me over. I was kind of cheeky back in those days, and I was learning all sorts of new things. This was in the 1970s, and I said offhandedly, "Well, this breathwork is great, but probably in a couple of months I'll be on to other things." And well, that was like 1976, and I have not found the height and the depth of breathwork yet. I've combined it with my work as a counselor, as a therapist, as a teacher, and now as a trainer over the past decades. And it's not something, when I say it takes over, I don't mean that's the only thing that one does is breath work. One has to breathe all the time to be alive, but breath work infuses an extra quality of consciousness into one's every activity, whether it be their profession, the work that they're doing, their daily life, their family life, their meditation. So I would call this the talk today, if I might, Mike, I would call it the evolution of modern breathwork.
Oh, I love that. Yes, love
Yeah.
it. Great title.
Because even Leonard Orr himself didn't say, who was one of the founders of modern breathwork, didn't say he invented it. He said he rediscovered it, because breathwork has been used for millennia by traditions in China, Tibet, India, for health, well-being, emotional stabilization, mental clarity, and spiritual enlightenment. So in a sense, it's not something totally new under the sun. What we've done in the modern world, however, is we've added the neurological and scientific understanding of the function and optimization of breathing, along with the democratization, if you will, of facilitation skills, such that it's now practiced on such a widespread scale in almost most of the countries of the world. So, I mean, we know, common sense, breath is foundational to our life. Just how we nurture ourselves, how we metabolize, all the way to how we have peak performance as humans. So for myself, being raised in a relatively emotionally suppressive atmosphere of the 1950s, it was athletics was the venue in which I could really express myself, put myself out more emotionally. And I mean, back in the day, there was even the terms of have kill shots and smash the enemy, Although I think the violence of humanity was channeled and buffered into athletics, and still is, actually. How do we put our aggressive energy into something that isn't really destructive of the human body or other human bodies, but actually brings the best out in us? And you got to breathe. In athletics, we used to call it having wind. So a person might start out running down the field, and halfway down, well, they didn't have wind. They didn't know how to breathe. So it was important in almost any athletic endeavor, maybe except chess, but to know how to breathe and sustain breath so that you have endurance. So that was a background for me when I went to school, and I knew that I wanted to be in some sort of a helping profession. I felt called. And actually, I was thinking, it should be engineering because I could do mathematics, but that didn't really call me. And I thought, no, psychology. Yeah, that's something that has scientific aspect to it, but also the care for people. And that was the decision going into college. So I studied psychology here in the Midwest, Marquette University. But after a while, academia was a bit much. I just had to. So I went and lived in France for a year and did schooling there and traveled, hitchhiked all around Europe. And that, to me, filled in the part of education that sitting in a classroom and regurgitating things from a book didn't fill in. Actual contact with a variety of people. Hitchhiking, you really do meet a variety of people. So I came back and I then went to graduate school and had actually was a very good graduate program. It was in clinical psychology at Fordham University in New York. And it was fairly humanistic. Like, for example, the first thing that we did was they took us to Bronx State Hospital and they said, now, here's a person you hang out with, and you cannot diagnose them. You cannot judge them. You just hang out and be with that person. Tell me what you think and what you feel. And some people wanted to be smart right away and get into, well, I think this person's different. No diagnoses, just what you experience in being with the person. I thought, wow, this is great. And I went into community psychology. And so I did my internship at St. Elizabeth's in Washington, D.C. And again, what a variety of people, and being sent out into communities that were racially embattled at the time, as a quotes expert. Well, I was a kindergartner in terms of learning how to navigate in community life. Then I came back to the Midwest, and actually, before I came back to the Midwest, I finished my PhD in clinical psychology, and I said, I've had it. And enough of the talking head. I am not going to sit in a room and just talk all day to people about their problems. I have to get back in my body, get back to earth. So 2 days after defending my PhD thesis, which was on working with suicidal people, I and my wife hopped on a plane, went to Africa. I said, I'm either going to have to go to Africa and get back to roots of humanity or go into full-time psychoanalysis. Fortunately, I chose going to Africa. And in the desert, Sahara desert, it's like bong enlightenment came. And that is, I really had to get back to earth. Forget the psychology business, go back. We came back to the Midwest. We planted gardens. We got our fingernails dirty. We were breathing with the earth, so to speak. And of course, we were headed to West Coast because that's where it was happening. That's where life was burgeoning and new consciousness was developing. Unfortunately, we brought back some hitchhikers ourselves from the African experience, and we had a little amoebic dysentery, something. So we got stationed right here in the Midwest. And I went back and took a community psychology job in the interim to create some income. But it's then when I began to discover a whole different way to approach helping humans. And this was the days when Gestalt therapy and bioenergetics was coming to the fore. And I needed that for myself. So especially Alexander Lowen's bioenergetics spoke to me. I mean, in the fiber of my being. And Alexander Lowen knew a lot about breathing. He knew that if a person was just analyzing their problems in their head, they weren't going to make changes. That changes that stayed in them were incorporated. And so we did things like being on a breathing stool, opening up our chest, learning how to breathe deeply and to vocalize, to let feelings come out. Then I said, now this is what I'm willing to learn and teach. This puts me back in my body, and I'm willing to follow this as a vocation. And I did, and learned other body techniques. We took Tai Chi. Tai Chi was newly brought over by Professor Chen-Men Cheng from the East. He had a mission to bring this over to the United States. And he had a school in New York City. And one of his main teachers, Fred Lehrman, we heard about and brought to Milwaukee, where we were living and still live. And he taught Tai Chi classes. Now, Fred was a very open systems person. And he, at that time, heard about rebirthing with Leonard Orr. And he tried it, he got into it, and he said, I recommend this. I think you should bring rebirthing to Milwaukee. Well, just at that time, my wife and I had purchased our first house. We had never had a house. We had moved 9 times in 2 years. Things were in boxes. Time to settle down because we had a child. We had lived in a spiritual community. We had been on enlightenment intensives. We had been on a spiritual path before. But now we got this house and we said, well, we can justify having this much space because we will dedicate part of the house to visiting spiritual teachers. And so it worked out perfectly. The rebirthers who came to our house at that time, the first certified rebirthers, did sessions here in our 3rd floor. And amazing the aliveness that it brought into my body and awareness into my consciousness. And I said, I want to follow this. This is something I want to learn and be able to share with the world. Well, I had already been doing bioenergetic classes. And so I went to my regular Monday evening bioenergetic class. And one of the women in the class all of a sudden fell to the floor and started breathing fast. What's going on here? This is breathing just like I was doing in a breathwork session. So I either have to tell her to stop doing that or to coach her to breathe like I was coached in a breathing session, which I did, of course. And so I became an instant rebirther right there, de facto. And I said, well, okay, that was great, but I've got to learn more about this from people who've had more experience. So we learned that Leonard Orr was having a rebirthing training in New Orleans, and I believe this was about 1975. And so the whole family on an airplane, 2 children, my wife and I, fly to New Orleans during Mardi Gras. And it was truly a circus, everything going on. But Leonard Orr was so welcoming. He wasn't a person that's like, well, get those children out of here. We're doing serious work. No, children are invited in. It was a true blessing to see and to experience what a group of people who were dedicated to doing breath work felt like. Again, the more I got into it, the more I was hooked by it. So I decided I have to go to every breathwork training I can and learn this so I have some skills to share with other people. And again, that's what we did. I went to some trainings myself. I had one training experience with one of the then certified rebirthers with a man who just operated his whole life intuitively. He raised himself in abandoned cars in New York City and didn't go past the 3rd grade, but he taught himself music, art, and I had one issue with rebirthing at that time, and that is that I would get into it, I'd get into a session, and I'd stop breathing. Well, now that's an issue with breath work, huh? It's like I would go into what's calling checking out. I would breathe for a while and try to be a good rebirthee, try to do it right, feel the energy, but all of a sudden I would seem to get very sleepy and bunk. And I had the best rebirthers in the world, literally, at that time. None of them could help me to stay awake, except this Bobby Birdsell guy, who I went to the training. I was the only one in the training. He did things very offhandedly. In Waterbury, Connecticut. And he got most of his clients from bars and on the street or wherever. But he just loved breath work and loved teaching it. And so he brought me to his house and he says, okay, we'll start with the session. Lay down there in the living room. Start your breathing. I'm going to go have lunch. What? So he went to lunch. Are you breathing in there? It's like, this is not professional. What? And intuitively, he knew the ticket to keep me breathing, which was I would check out on my anger. Whenever I'd get to the experience of frustration or anger, I would check out, because in my family, we didn't have anger. I mean, of course, there was anger, but it was suppressed. And so there was sarcasm, there was being clever, but there was not a direct expression or even an experience that you could label, oh, that's anger. And it pissed me off. This guy isn't even paying any attention to me. He isn't in there trying to keep me awake. And so I stayed awake. And I learned something critical at that time, is that we have to give permission for our emotional body to come out as we breathe. In fact, my personal view is that this planet is a place that people come to deal with their emotional bodies, because we've got great physical capabilities, wonderful mental capabilities, even high spiritual involvement, but it's in the emotional arena that our hose is crimped. And so learning to identify and breathe with feelings became my torch to carry in breathwork. And it worked in so beautifully with the bioenergetics that I had learned, because Alexander Lowen, he was married to a physical therapist. And so he knew about movement. He knew about expression, not just verbal, but with the body. And so I began to incorporate, for people who, like me, had checked out on their feelings, ways to enervate themselves and to get the flow of breathing going in their bodies with the use of movement, vocalization, expression of emotion. And I still do that. As a matter of fact, I'll go into it a little later. I took a lot more of what Alexander Lowen and his brilliance learned about the developmental stages of people and how each of these challenges at developmental stages are either integrated or not, and they become the stuck points for people throughout their life. Well, back to Leonard. Leonard went through his journey of breath back in the 40s and 50s. First of all, as I said that I did, with a spiritual awakening. He awoke, and in high school and college had introduction to charismatic religion and having experiences of religious spiritual awakening. And he knew that that was a keystone to his life. But he was also carrying the baggage that humans carry with them from his own birth. He recognized through when he got into learning how to breathe, and he spent many, many years in a bathtub breathing, he learned about his own in utero experience, the first bathtub that he was in, that his mother had 3 children and she was done. She did not want to have any more children. But she ended up having 3 more, he being the last one. And he said, coming into life, he was very excited. This is great to be incorporated in body. But he picked up that emotional charge of his mother not wanting him, being depressed at his presence. And in his metaphorical way, he said he wanted to check out even before birth. His umbilical cord was wrapped 3 times around his neck. And the doctor had to bring him out, cut the cord, push him back in, turn him around, and bring him out. So his transition, his birth trauma, was pretty great. And in the course of the years, let's see, I think he said it was 1962 to 1974, when he was doing all this breathing, he unraveled that birth trauma. But in the course of doing that, there were several years when he replayed those suicidal tendencies. For a couple of years, he said 65 to 67, he had these recurring suicidal impulses. He stuck with the process, thank God. He breathed through it. And coming out the other side, he led a relatively healthy and happy life. And he had bouts with cancer and other things, all of which he learned to get beyond. I think anyone who is a healer also goes through their own healing crises, and in so doing, lives with the confidence that this can be overcome. Not that I read it in a book or I heard about someone that did it, but I experienced this in my own body. I experienced the power of the breath and the mind working together. So he was born in Walton, New York, and as he began to teach what he called spiritual psychology seminars, because he learned a lot from Thomas Troward and others. He left the strictly Christian tradition because of the confines that were put on in terms of traditional religion. He knew that this had to be something for all the people, not dictated about what they can believe and how they can believe it and how they can practice it. And he knew it had something to do with his experiences of breathing in the bathtub. Now, his association was that you had to be in water and breathe in order to have these insights and this evolution. And so in San Francisco, he and a group of people that he had taught this breathing to, he would sit there with people by the bathtub and help them, coach them through the breathing. Because he said everyone would reach a point. He said, when he first taught this, he said, well, get in the bathtub and let yourself breathe till you get to the point where you feel like, enough, I got to get out of here. Then stay and breathe some more. What? Yes, it's getting past that experience of flight, that you can't take this anymore. You just got to get out of here. And your mind will make up an excuse. I got to make dinner, or whatever it is. No, he said, no, stay through that. Let yourself breathe through that experience. And he would stay with people next to the bathtub as they breathed until they got past it. And all of a sudden, they didn't have that panic anymore. All of a sudden, they were starting to get insights about their life and implement changes in their life. He says, we are onto something here. So on to California, where there's a lot of free-thinking people, and get hot tubs. And so he and a number of people purchased a house. I think it was on Lion Street in, I don't know, I remember that, in San Francisco, and they called it Theta House. Now, I just learned this yesterday because I was reading about it. It was called Theta House because theta was the state of brain waves of complete calmness and bliss and in deep sleep. And Leonard thought that was the goal of being able to maintain that state of calmness throughout your life. So in Theta House, they had wet breath work. They had the hot tub, people would breathe, and it was a regular process. Now, something that Leonard realized from the onset, that he later on said he thinks many people didn't give credit to and got lost along the way, was that just breathing and waking up was not enough to change your life. You needed community. You needed association with like-spirited, like-minded people who would support the changes that you were putting into your life. Because when you change belief systems, you don't always get a lot of support from the community around you. And in the beginning, to really institute these changes and incorporate them in your body, it's good to be in a community where people are having these out-of-body experiences, all of the things that can happen in breath work, non-ordinary consciousness, as Stan Grof calls it, that would happen. And rather than getting taken off to a mental institution, people can help you learn the meaning of it, breathe through it, and expand the boundaries of your playground and what is fair game for you to be aware of and grow in life. And so Leonard, from the start, instituted what he called one-year seminars. And this was a group of people that committed to be together for 1 year. And they met from once a month from 10 in the morning till 10 in the evening and immersed themselves in spiritual practice and spiritual teaching. And then they would do rebirthing sessions in between that. So this one-year seminar program was vital to the spread of breathwork. Having spiritual community was vital for breathwork to actually be incorporated into people's lives and their lifestyle. And this first one-year seminar group of 80 people actually then pooled their money and bought a breathwork center in the Sierra Nevadas, Campbell's Hot Springs, as it was called. And so the first sessions were done in Walton, New York. Then there was Theta House in San Francisco. And now the third center was in Campbell's Hot Springs. And again, people lived there, people taught there, people from all over the country came there to get breathwork training. I, of course, was gung-ho on all of this business, and I went to the large yearly gatherings where you could become a certified rebirther, as it was called at the time. And you had to have taken trainings, you had to be able to facilitate other people in breathwork, but you also had to be able to stand up in front of the entire assembly, could be 100 people, and say, I am a certified breathwork, rebirther, as it was called at the time. If one person object, nope, you're done, sit down. Oh, and at that time, since when I went to my second one, and I was proposing myself as a candidate to be a certified rebirther, at that time, there were 10 people who were already certified, had gone through that process. And you had to get the signatures of those 10 people, as well as the approval of everyone at the Jubilee, as it was called at that time. Well, I got the signatures of 9 of the 10 people. No, I wasn't shot down by anyone in the group. And I didn't get the signature of the 10th certified rebirther. She was holding out. She wasn't quite sure. Perfect for me. Perfect. I had to, as Leonard said, you're only certified by yourself. You can only, and you have to certify yourself first. So all of my doubts, all of my fears, oh, I went to all this trouble, expense of bringing the whole family out here, even flying a babysitter out here with us to take care of the kids while we were doing this. And the ignominy of not being chosen. I had to go through all of that stuff. As I sat there in the final ceremony, before they announced who the new certified rebirthers were that year. I breathed and I got clear. No, this doesn't dissuade me one iota from what I'm called to do. I will continue to teach and learn breathwork. It is my calling. I looked up and the final person nodded her head, said, you got it. How dramatic. and so I was pronounced a certified rebirther at that time. And I believe there was 12 of us then, because there was only 2 people that year. I'll have to check on the records here. There might have been more than 2 people. I think I remember Bob Mandel, Rima Beth Starr, myself, and Jack Shazama. So there might have been 4 of us that year. They were past as certified breathworkers. Okay, great. back to doing breath work with people, doing more training, learning more, because the real teacher here is the spirit of breath. The real teacher for breath workers is their clients. I used to say, God is outside the door sending your next teacher in the form of a rebirthee. And it's true. If you think you know it all and you're just trying to impose it on someone else, you're doing them a disservice. It's a journey that you're engaging in together, energetically, spiritually, physically. And so when I went back the next year to the yearly gathering and people at this point, I mean, this was spreading like wildfire. This was 1977, 1978. People were coming from all over the world that heard about this. Amazing. And Leonard was tireless. Leonard traveled continuously. He was going from country to country, teaching people, getting them set up so that they could teach. He was like Johnny Appleseed of breath work. Amazing courage that he demonstrated in carrying this around the world. So people would then come from around the world, and this one was in Colorado, I believe. But a number of the certified rebirthers at the time recognized something's wrong with this picture. We got people getting on airplanes coming from Russia, coming from all over, and we're going to get maybe 1 to 4 at the most people certified. This seems to be slowing down something that wants to blossom. And we rebelled. It's like, as good breath workers, we learn that you've got to continually break form, not lockstep along. And so we wrote a proposal called a Proposal for Excellence, in which we decided that this process of certifying people was starting to get too inbred. It's like you got to get the signatures of everyone that was certified before, and anyone off the street could come to the training and say, you're out of here. Nah, this was not serving the cause of the spirit of breath. And so we rebelled from the process and said that we wouldn't participate in it. We wanted to open it up, make it more democratic, more egalitarian, more, and that was the beginning of the dysphoria, so to speak. I think there was only one more jubilee after that, and a couple of people were certified, but that was it. And because the major contingent of people who were certified at that time said, we're not going to carry this mantle ourselves. We want more people to be certified around the world. And that's what happened. The movement then spread, and people were developing their own ways of teaching, learning, teaching breath work. Myriads of schools were developed, and the creativity and the joyousness of breath now really caught fire. And I had volunteered to be Leonard's co-director of the one-year seminar community program. It's called Theta International. And what I did in that was to help set up schedules for travel for breathwork teachers to go from, on the East Coast, they would go from New Jersey to New York to Boston, and make it easy for teachers to travel, because in some communities, the one-year seminar might consist of 6 people. In another community, there was 30 people. So it was quite varied, but Leonard was clear. He wanted everyone to get the teachings and everyone to be able to get breath work if they were called to do it. And so as teachers, we would travel from city to city. Sometimes we'd make money. Sometimes we'd just make our plane fare. But we set up circuits. I helped do this, to set up circuits and stay in connection with organizers in various cities. And so they would organize the one-year seminar meetings to be in conjunction with those in other cities, so that a teacher could on one weekend be in New York and the next weekend be in Boston and so on. So this was work that I had done, and then got the tap on the shoulder. Jim, it's time for you now, instead of inviting all the teachers to Milwaukee, as you have been doing, it's time for you to lead a one-year seminar yourself and lead it open to teachings of other. And I remember I was in the basement doing a sanding project on a dining room table, and all of a sudden it was like, boom, I've got to teach. And there was an old crumpled up paper bag and a stub of a pencil. And I sat down and I wrote down 12 seminars. And this is what I was teaching the next year, or what I thought I was going to be teaching the next year. Because being inspired, being driven, and having the spirit, I put the word out to everyone. Family, friends, community, all of my clients, everyone, about the new one-year seminar program that I was teaching. Well, one person showed up. And this was a man that I had worked with who had schizophrenia at the county hospital. He knew nothing about what this was about, but he thought I was a nice guy, and so he just came to support me. Again, gut check time. Ooh, this is the response I get for putting myself out like this in the world? Do I really want to do this? Is it time to hang up the spurs? Just go back to inviting other teachers to come in? Breathe with it, Jim. Breathe with it. No. Get back on the horse. Put it out with your heart, not just with your head. Invite people in to the family of spirit. The next year, full program. And for 33 years then, it was the beginning of the School of Spiritual Psychology, which I later called the School of Integrative Psychology, because it integrated mind, body, and spirit. And what started out as a one-year seminar program, meeting once a month, turned into a full school program, where in the first year of the school, we met 7 times a month for a year. We learned all sorts of things on the spiritual, intellectual, emotional path. We bonded together. At the end of that first year program, the students said, we don't want to quit. Let's do it again. And I said, no. To do it again would be to imply you didn't get it the first time. So we'll create a second year. First year was the personal integration program. Now the second year is a spiritual leadership program. Because it's no longer about learning things and incorporating themselves. Now you have to be a spiritual leader. You have to take this into your world. So a whole new curriculum came up about spiritual leadership. the second year of the school. Well, same thing happened after that. Well, no, we're just getting cranky. We don't want to stop. We want to keep going. I said, okay, one more year, that's it, which was the graduate apprentice program. Now that you're a spiritual leader, you have to be an apprentice to going out and creating spiritual community yourself. So what evolved was a 3-year program of the School of Spiritual Psychology. Again, became the School of Integrative Psychology, and was combined with breathwork and a breathwork training program, which started in 1990, went for 33 years. And as all things, this was spreading not just here in Milwaukee, this was spreading around the world. In 2000 and, well, let's see, there was an ad that I read someplace in 1996, and it said, Global Inspiration Conference. What's that? Well, what had sprung up again was a yearly meeting of breathworkers from around the world. I said, I'm going. Again, family, and off we go. This is before we had children. And so it was Joan and I and friends in our Milwaukee community. We got on the airplane and went to Italy, Sardinia, to be exact, where Robin Lowley was hosting the 3rd International Global Inspiration Conference. Heaven. This is with breathworkers from around the world, people who didn't even speak the same language, but we had translators, and we shared the joy and the ecstatic experience of breathwork. It was relatively chaotic, and no one took notes about anything. Everyone was just so, and I thought, well, wait a minute, there's some great stuff here. We got to write some of this down. So I became this self-appointed scribe for some of the decisions that were being made about how to promote breathwork and how to support one another in this process. And national coordinators were being designated to represent the spread of breathwork in the various countries. Well, who are they? How are they elected? What do you know? So I began taking notes on all this stuff, and every year thereafter, I would spend my whole time with the organization of the International Breathwork Foundation, as it was called, that sponsored the Global Inspiration Conferences. And again, then finally I said, all this stuff is happening in Europe. That's the only place that these conferences have been. How about the Western Hemisphere? Let's bring it to the United States. So I made a proposal. I said, all right, I am the national coordinator for the United States. I would like to host the Global Inspiration Conference of 2001 in the United States. All right, well, then I had to follow the rules. You know, I had to get a venue. And at that time, this was, you got to understand, this was an offshoot of the days of the 70s and the 80s. And so breathwork had graduated from being just things done in water. Leonard thought it was originally the water that was doing it. And then, I don't know, someone's hot tub broke down or whatever. And they decided, oh, we can do this on land. And so it was the breath that was actually doing it. It wasn't the water. And so, as Leonard said, it became a little less esoteric because all of the wet breath work was without clothes in a hot tub with a snorkel. And now people could actually breathe on dry land with their clothes on and experience the ecstasy of breath releases, of letting go of the holding patterns in the body. Boom, And so it had jump-started, again, breathwork around the world. And the International Breathwork Foundation, started by Gunell Manet and Bo Wallström, had the first Global Inspiration Conference in Sweden. And then the next one was in Poland. And I jumped on board on the third one, which was in Italy. And proposed then that it be brought to the United States. Well, one of the requirements at the time was that you had to have nude breath work and wine served at every meal. Imagine in the Midwest United States, I'd say, okay, we're going to have an international convention. Oh, we're interested. Oh, yes, we're bringing people from around the world. Oh, that's great. It's great. And we need nude breath work. And well, we'll have to talk to our board about this. We'll get back to you. So finally, I did find a ski lodge that accepted those things as long as we did the nude stuff up on a hill away from it. But as we found out, none of that stuff was necessary. And when you're in, we say, when you're in Rome, do as the Romans do. Well, when you're in the United States, do as the people in the United States do. So the customs changed. And in fact, I started introducing, bringing many leaders, not just a couple, but as many leaders as I could discover in the world who were top trainers of breathwork, including Leonard Orr. I gave an invitation to come to the conference here in Wisconsin, and they all accepted. What? Yeah. So they weren't being paid to come. They all wanted to be here. So this totally amazed me. I said, the Spirit is running this show, not me. Spirit is calling these people in. So it was a magnificent conference. And at that conference, we decided it's time to start bringing together the elders, as it were, people who have been doing this for a while, and look at what are ethics and what are standards in the world of breath work. Because, we went from, it's like a coterie of just a certain special people that got one another's signature to the Wild West. Anyone can do anything in any way. But ooh, wait a minute, this was in some places was getting not a good reputation. So maybe it would be good for us to decide what would be standards, what would be things that for breathwork training, and what would be ethics. We've got 22 schools together to agree to this. And Jessica Dibb agreed to be co-director with me. And we had a board of a number of other veteran breathworkers in the world. And we had yearly meetings, generally at Jessica Dibb's inspiration community in Baltimore. And it started to set a framework for training. And it didn't mean that, oh, you couldn't do breathwork if you didn't agree to ethics and training standards. It just meant that we're going to make this a profession now, because a profession is an agreement between a group of practitioners and the general public, that people who are certified by this group have had this kind of training and subscribe to this kind of ethics. And if they have a breach of ethics, we take care of that. And they can no longer be part of or advertise themselves as part of that. And this is what the medical profession does, the legal profession. Anything that is going to establish itself and get the trust of the public has to self-monitor. So this is what we've been doing since 2001. It started out as an International Breathwork Training Alliance. And then after a number of years, we called it the Global Professional Breathwork Alliance. Taking international, it's not nations, it's the globe that's aligning together. Now, meanwhile, again, there were inveterate teachers, people who actually were at that conference in 2001, like Dan Brule and Judith Kravitz, Sandra Ray. She wasn't at that particular conference. And because she couldn't be there, she sent Jessica Dibb. And so Jessica really caught fire with this. And because she had the same dream in her community, she knew that it was time to get a consensus, consortium, as it were, of schools that were serious about professional training. And so these people were traveling around the world, setting up training center, doing trainings in every country that, even countries that didn't speak English as a national language. They would get interpreters. I've been in those situations, and with interpreters, you can actually, because the universal language is the breath. So you can use linguistic interpreters to deal with the mind. It is the language of the breath that does the healing. So we've been doing this Global Professional Breathwork Alliance since 2001, and we're now on the verge of really expanding this. We know that there's a growth spurt that's coming, because breathwork is taking off in the world. It is just Judith Kravitz, for example, I think has training centers in over 50 countries around the world. So we need to come together to better organize and spread the word of what professional breathwork can mean for humanity. So we're doing this now. We have a new executive committee besides Jessica and myself. It's Anthony Avignano, Ann Harrison, and Viola Edwards. And now we're expanding the board to include many other representatives of breathwork schools as well as breathwork practitioners. So again, we're at one of those growth spurt points. And COVID and the pandemic has underlined the need for this. It's underlined the need to spread healing and the natural healing energy that every human being has, that Leonard said was your credential. So if you've got a belly button, you can be a healer. It's time for us to spread this on a greater scale and have more people involved. Now, I, in my own style, inaugurated therapeutic breathwork. And therapeutic breathwork involves the use of the bioenergetic body themes, which I've translated into 6 major themes. Alexander Lowen called them body types, but we're not typing people. We're looking at the themes that they can carry on due to trauma at 6 major stages of their life. Leonard Orr, I believe, was exemplifying the first body theme, which is psychic sensitive. Tremendous brilliance. And in integrating this, he brought realms of consciousness to the world. But he also was very sensitive himself and had to spend a lot of time alone, a lot of time doing spiritual purification, and he eschewed group breathwork. He did not like group breathwork. Again, his boundary, he would pick up what he called psychic sludge. And so what I developed in therapeutic breathwork was knowing what your body theme is, getting and integrating the strengths of it, but being able to deal with the weaknesses of that body theme. And that's what we use in breathwork now, because each of these 6 stages, people breathe differently. And if we know what stage they had a trauma in, or they have holding patterns in, we can tailor the breath and the movement and expression to help them deal with that particular stage and bring the gifts of that stage to life, which is what Leonard did. He brought the gifts of psychic sensitivity to breathwork. So I have created that school of therapeutic breathwork, and so many other teachers have brought their specialties into their schools. And now we're bringing these schools together so that a person can learn some things in one school and some things in another school. It's time for us to bring that sense of cooperation in rather than different silos teaching one brand. And in order to be, we have 80 some certified practitioners now through the Global Professional Breathwork Alliance and some 25 schools. But in order to be a certified school, you've got to be sure that there's more than just one brand of breathwork being taught so that your students are exposed to different ways. And as I said, we're all working for the same teacher, which is the spirit of breath. So Mike gave me this wonderful stage to present all of this on, which I'm so grateful for. And he also said that I could tell people about recent things that are happening in our school, which is something that's relatively new that I've developed over the past several years, which is online and in-person breathwork training combined. And I've done online and in-person things for evenings or day long, but this is an intensive training that we're doing the 16th through the 20th of August this year, which is a hybrid, which there will be people from the virtual world who will be there getting virtual training by teachers working with them, as well as teachers in the space of a beautiful, beautiful retreat center, which we have completely to ourselves. And so the energy of bringing these two worlds together has magnified, I would say exponentially increased the energy available for people during this training. So I invite you all to have contact with us at transformationsusa.com, transformations with an S, USA.com. And also look at the years of trainings that I have recorded and edited and are available for people to take at their own rate and at their own pace, which is also can be incorporated into being in our part of our certification program. In other words, you can take in-person things and you can take some online things and virtual classes. So there's many ways to learn because there's also many ways to teach this. And people are learning, some of the people who have been doing in-person breathwork for years is, oh, we can't do this online stuff. Oh, this is not real. This is not real. Now, what's real is essential connection. And what we've discovered, and what Mike here is promoting, is that we can connect essentially with one another, whether it's through the internet or what I call the internet, our inner connection with one another. Those can be combined. We can learn and grow together. And it's not just an interesting theory. We've done it. We did this last year, completely online, with no in-person, This year, we're doing it online and in person at the same time. So this is my summary of how modern breath work. Some people say, well, wasn't Stan Grof an innovator of breathwork? Absolutely. Stan Grof is a medical doctor who was working with altered states of consciousness, LSD, in therapy. And when that was forbidden, then he learned about the breath. Leonard Orr says he learned about it from him. Stan Grof says, I don't know that story, but I know that both of them have really advanced the cause of breathwork on our planet. And so can you. I invite you to join this. I called it the conspiracy of breathwork. Comes from the Latin con, meaning with, and spiritus, meaning breath. And so when people wanted to put their forces together to break traditions, they had a conspiracy. If it was secret, then of course no one was supposed to know about it. They just breathed together and conspired. But this is a public conspiracy. We are conspiring together to let the spirit of divine consciousness be awakened in every human being on the planet using the agency of breath. It's not just breath, it's conscious, connected breathing. So it's not just, well, everyone's breathing, so what's the big deal? We're bringing consciousness into breath, which wakes us up to, we are all divine spirits. We are all on this road home to the unity of the brothers and sisters that we all are in spirit. Please join us in this conspiracy. You can go as far as you want, or you can get bitten like me and have it be in every part of your life. I still use it every day before I go to bed. Actually, I use it when I get in bed. I use it before I get out of bed and after I get out of bed and during the day. Different times. Therapeutic breathwork is a toolbox. It's not one kind of breathing. It's a toolbox of slower than normal, and faster than normal techniques, and a roadmap for how to use the right breath, the right person at the right time. Okay, Mike, I told you, I warned you, you put a quarter in me, and I'll just keep going.
Jim, that was you've got a real gift for storytelling, and you kept me interested the whole time. So thank you so much for sharing that story, the evolution of modern breathwork. I didn't know almost any of that story. So a real gift. So thank you, Jim. I want to ask you a couple of quick questions, if that's all right, before we wrap up, because I think there's so much there. There's so much to unpack, and we may have to do another one of these another day and do some more. Wanted to ask, so you're talking about the breath work you do. So this is always really interesting to me. So what are you doing when you get into bed? What sort of breathing are you doing, or when you wake up?
HeartMath has discovered what they call coherent breathing. And a lot of research has gone into this. It's bringing the wavelengths that the brain emits and the wavelengths that the heart emits. And the heart actually has a greater breadth of energy that's put out than the brain. You believe that? But the brain is usually what leads our life. Well, if you breathe at a rate of 5 seconds for inhale, 5 seconds for exhale, for 5 minutes, 3 times a day, for several weeks, you will actually change the coherence of your brain and your heart waves together. You bring them together.
Yeah.
This is not, again, just a spiritual theory.
No.
They have tested this.
Yes.
And so I do this coherent breathing before I go to bed and after I wake up. I also do, like I said, I've studied techniques from India, Tibet, China, doing a lot of Taoist research and things like this. And what the Taoists, for example, have discovered a long time ago is that if your inhale is shorter than your exhale,
Mm-hmm.
and you do that for a while, it has a calming effect. So after I get in bed, I do an exercise. Now there's a typical one that is called the 4-7-8 breath. Inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. I do a rigorous one. I'm even a little cautious about saying this out loud because I field test things before I put it out. But let's just say I do one that expands on that, even a longer hold and a longer exhale. And whammo, calms me down. I am asleep.
Okay, so extending, so you do the 4 in, but then you're really holding the hold, and then you're slow breathing. And when with the slow breath, you're using the mouth or the nose for the out breath?
I'm using this, most of the, what I call maintenance breathing, which is slower than normal breathing, is through the nose.
Yeah, okay.
I don't recommend people go around mouth breathing for health or anything. We only use mouth breathing for certain faster than normal breathing techniques, which innervates the sympathetic nervous system to help us get into areas of trauma. And we actually reprogram the right brain where trauma is stored, and it goes, and it's out of our consciousness. Because in trauma, and again, this is a whole other seminar we can go into. In trauma, what happens is the limbic system shuts down the pathways to the prefrontal cortex, is where we plan and think, and it goes into emergency mode. So the amygdala innervates, the hypothalamus shuts down, and things that happen during trauma are often out of our consciousness. It goes into what's called implicit only memory. And in that implicit only memory, it's still there. We've categorized it. We don't want to walk around feeling terrified all the time, but all of a sudden I see a man with a beard. Oh, Mike, you've got a beard. Oh, I can't talk anymore. I've got, it's like, Jim, what's the problem? Well, it's nothing wrong with you. It's just that you triggered something in me about a man with a beard that perhaps abused me as a child, whatever that is. I'm just using that as an example.
Sure.
And people have all sorts of idiosyncrasies, we might call them, in life. It's like, oh, I just can't eat that kind of food. Oh, I don't like those kind of people. Oh, I can't be in that kind of a space.
Yes.
And recognize there's a reason for all of these things. It's not that we have to know intellectually the reason for all of them, but what we can do is we can learn to reprogram with our breathing and our conscious intention, so those aren't triggers for us in our life.
Exciting. Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, it's I've done some deep breathing. I've had some quite deep experiences and some big emotional releases. So I've got a little flavor of, I think, what it's about, but I'm still very, very much a white belt mentality. Jim, my last question for you is, I guess, for people that are watching this. So first of all, I'll put your links down below so people can very easily, if you're watching this now and you want to know more about the training that's coming up, or you want to get straight to Jim's website, you can just click on the YouTube link below. And also Jim's got a fantastic YouTube channel. So make sure you go over there, you hit subscribe and you follow his channel as well. But Jim, my question to you is, if someone's watching this right now, where would you direct them directly after this podcast finishes? Would you say go and do some breathing, read this book, check out this interview? Where's a good place for somebody to go that's interested now and wants to get deeper into this? Or maybe not where they go, but what would you recommend are the next steps for somebody here that's interested in this sort of thing we've been talking about, or you've been talking about?
Yeah, it's amazing the resources that we have at our disposal nowadays. I mean, and we're still guided by our own inner spirit. So having that, You could go on the Global Professional Breathwork Alliance site and see, oh, here are breathworkers in various parts of the world. Here are schools in various parts of the world. Let me investigate this school because the websites are all there. What does this one provide? No. Or you could just go on the internet and put on breathwork. But as I said, I'm, of course, going to say, well, start with someone that's, been willing to say, we do this kind of training, we make it public, and we have ethical standards. I have a book called Breakthrough with Breathwork, but there's there's hundreds of good breathwork books out there. Again, some of those you can get on also the IBF, International Breathwork Foundation, has a list of breathworkers. And they also now are indicating those who have been certified through the Global Professional Breathwork Alliance. But again, they have breathwork schools and breathworkers around the world. Yeah. So it's okay to start out with something that something that has some organization. Other organizations are popping up to spread breathwork. Dan Brule has a new organization, which is, again, he's great in terms of getting schools to cooperate, and practitioners to cooperate with one another. So there's lots of that information, and people just even email me and say, here's what my interests are. Yeah. Or look at the GPBA website and say, okay, here's the emails of the elders, and let's check out with them.
Yeah. Wonderful.
But you don't have to look far and wide to find it now, as in the days when we started.
Yeah, and the internet's a great tool, isn't it, for finding these people, like-minded people and experts in the field.
Actually, I will say this too. Since you asked, and you mentioned the YouTube channel, I have like over 300. I decided at some point, I've got all these courses I've done for, since the 1970s. I've put most of them, I've chopped them up and put them in YouTube video. I have over 300 YouTube videos, but that's a maze to walk through. So it's like, oh, it's in playlists, Jim. So now I have playlists that you can go on. And if you're interested in just breathwork stuff, there is a playlist of all of the YouTube videos that will teach you the 100 breath technique, teach you the coherent breathing, teach you the circular breath, and meditations for breathing. And so that is eminently accessible right on Jim Morningstar YouTube channel under the Breathwork playlist.
There you go, guys. That's where you need to go next. Go to Jim's YouTube channel and check out the free resource that's there. Jim, I want to say a personal thank you for giving up your time and for telling us that story completely, because it's a fascinating story about the evolution of modern breath work, and it's been a real honor and pleasure to be a member of the audience, to sit here and listen to that story. So thank you so much for everything you've done and you continue to do, and I hope we'll be able to get you back on the podcast again at some point in the near future.
It would be totally my honor, Mike. Thank you for the work that you're doing. You are disseminating the seeds of this throughout the world, and that's really an important part of supporting the spirit of breath on our planet.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot. Thank you, guys. Till next time. See you, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye. Hey everybody, thank you for staying all the way through to the end of that Breathcast with Jim Morningstar. I hope you enjoyed it. What a story, and what a privilege that I get to share that on this Breathcast. So real thank you, Jim, if you're watching this. I really appreciate your time and appreciate you sharing that information with us. Much appreciated. Thank you. Really, really honoured for that. A final reminder. So 19th of November 2022, etch that into your brain. Why is that important? Because it's the first online Airheads Day, where me, Mike Maher, and Tom Granger will be presenting to you via Zoom, via the comfort of your own home, a full smorgasbord of breath work, introducing breath variables, introducing different breathing techniques to achieve different states of consciousness, deep relaxation, energetic states. We cannot wait to share with you some of the breath tech that's out there, how we can measure our CO2 and all these very cool different things, blood pressure, the whole malarkey. You get to keep a copy of the recordings as well. So are you an airhead? Would you like to be an airhead? Would you like to come and join the airheads and come for our first breath online event? It's going to be very exciting. I hope to see some of you there. If you're interested, the link is down below. Click on that. There's loads of information about what's going on. Sign up now. It's 47 quid. It's $55, something like that. That is a whole day's worth of value. What's that 50 quid going to get you otherwise? I don't know. A latte these days? I don't know, with inflation, what that 50 could get you. Maybe a packet of peanuts. Well, actually, for 50 quid, $50, you get a whole day of the kind of the last 5 years of my knowledge, all the work that award-winning author Tom Granger's put into his routines, and together we present to you this model, the Airheads model. So hopefully I've moistened your beak slightly and you're thinking, well, what the hell is Airheads? Could I be an airhead? Do I want to be an airhead? Am I already an airhead? Maybe. So click the link down below, have a look at the information, come and join us. You can put some comfy clothes on, you can do some moving and dancing and shaking and breathing with us. And what else you can do on a Saturday anyway? There's nothing else to do. You might as well come and do some breathing with me and Tom. Anyway, thank you for watching the Breathcast. I love you all. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for sticking all the way through to the end. And I will see you maybe on this video here, which is another Breathcast, or maybe you want to do a nice breathing exercise here. And click on the link for Airheads. Cheers.